Hello everybody, this is Ben Reno here again, just broadcasting from the backyard, and once again, it's about Blackberry. Now, there have been a lot of sources and different rumors floating around this week that Blackberry is working on an Android device. Now, some of these rumors have pointed to it being an entry-level device that doesn't have very high specification, perhaps for emerging markets. Others have pointed to it being a collaboration with Samsung. Others have even said that it's going to be their next flagship device with basically the slider phone, which was previewed at Mobile World Congress, with that being the device that's going to be running Android and being better stacked than the BlackBerry Passport. Now, I'm not sure how much validity these rumors have. There's a lot of rumors floating around, and more than any other BlackBerry rumors in recent history, they've just all been pointing towards at least BlackBerry working on an Android device, even if they're not sure what form that's going to come in. It could still all be smoke and mirrors, but since there's so many rumors, I have a feeling that it's true. And I think there's a few reasons for this. First off, BlackBerry's new CEO, John Chen, is really focused on just making the company profitable and really not wanting to put any money into dead ends. To that end, we saw him cancel the music service for BlackBerry 10, and a whole host of other things. BlackBerry advertising has gone down to pretty much nothing. It's just there's been a lot of cut costs. Now, the problem with cutting costs is that basically when you're building a new platform, it does take some money because there are other established platforms. You're coming into the game late, and you want to get to the same place. That's something that I don't see John Chen really being willing or able to do. That's why we've seen that the Amazon App Store has become available on BlackBerry 10 smartphones, and also that Android emulation is just getting better and better on the devices. These influence the BlackBerry 10 community, and I'll explain so in a little bit. But that's just where we sit right now. And I want to talk about why it would be a good idea and why it would be a bad idea for BlackBerry to create an Android device. First, let's talk about the good, because honestly, I don't have as many of those. But see, so the pros are BlackBerry making an Android device would open up their market to a lot more people to buy it. Basically, there's a lot of people who like the things that BlackBerry stands for, but they don't like that their devices don't have very many apps, and that, I'm trying to think of it now, and that sideloading them is difficult and buggy. So releasing an Android device would open up the market to that 80% of people which buy an Android device out there. And then also, it'd be able to run Android apps better. So, I used a Z10 for a period of time, and running Android on it was extremely buggy. It made the phone heat up like it was going to melt, and it was a terrible experience. Now, I guarantee this is better with the Passport with its newer processor, but it still is a huge problem. Now, let's move on to the reasons why BlackBerry coming out with an Android device would be a bad idea. First off, and there is a big reason for this, BlackBerry 10 is much better than Android in several key areas. Android is actually based on an open source Linux operating system, so it's just an offshoot of that. So it's very open, very easily hackable. That's why usually once phones come out, it'll take just a few hours in some cases, or maybe a few weeks for them to be opened up, and then people can put CyanogenMod or whatever sort of stuff they want onto them. For some people, that's a good thing, but for people who are trying to secure their information, make sure it can't be looked at by somebody who gets a hold of their phone, that's a very bad thing. And at a hackers conference, the BlackBerry 10 operating system was the only phone that was not able to be cracked by the people there within 10 minutes. And since they stopped after 10 minutes, we aren't even sure it can be hacked at all. Now, also, As much as Android has improved over the years and it's become less resource intensive, the newer versions are very resource intensive. And there are a few problems inherent to Android devices which I've noticed, which don't necessarily plague BlackBerry devices. Basically, if you have let's say 80% of your storage filled up for your Android device, it starts to run very, very slowly. I ran into this problem with several Android phones, most recently my HTC One, that when you fill up the memory, not the RAM, the memory of the device, whether it's 16, 32 gigabytes or whatever, once you get about to 80% filled, the device will do everything much, much slower. And I remember having it at pretty much maximum capacity, and it performed like a dog. Just everything took a very, very long time to load. The home screen would take 8-10 reseconds to redraw itself, and even longer before I can interact with it. So basically, and there's lots of problems like that. Like basically, Android throws all its resources at everything at once, so it doesn't really prioritize things well. So just, you get scrolling lag. Connect scrolling still isn't perfect on Android. You get apps crashing all the time. I have apps that routinely crash on me 3 or 4 times in the same hour. Have to reopen them, wait for me to be signed back in. It's a terrible, terrible experience. And native BlackBerry 10 apps perform a lot better. And BlackBerry 10 is just much better at handling apps with native platforms and not Android app emulation. So yeah, there's tons of problems with Android. It's buggy, glitchy, slows down. A lot of people don't really put value on Android devices. They're viewed as disposable. I know that's how I feel. It's just, you get an Android device and it's not nearly as valuable as something running Windows Phone or iOS or even BlackBerry 10, because there's just so many devices out there running it, and it's free. There's not really much value to it other than that its market position. And then also, so basically, releasing an Android device would confuse BlackBerry 10 users. You've got a lot of people out there. BlackBerry, you've stuck to your guns on BlackBerry 10 for a very long time, and you've been saying, this is the greatest productivity platform. We have a great keyboard, great multitasking experience. It's very secure. And then coming out with an Android device, you're basically saying, well, we know we said all these things, but we're coming out with an Android device anyway, and I'm sure that they're going to say that it has all these same qualities. So you're confusing the existing base, which has basically gone out of their way to be devoted to your product, and you're just saying, well, BlackBerry 10's okay. I mean, you're really not giving a clear message. And then also, basically, for a long time now, for over a year, basically since Chen came into office, that BlackBerry's actually been telling people who want to make apps for the platform, make Android apps. Make Android apps, and then just port them to the BlackBerry 10 store, to the Amazon App Store. Don't bother making real BlackBerry 10 apps. Just make Android apps. And I'm sure that BlackBerry does this so that there isn't as much of a wall to climb to get your apps onto the BlackBerry 10 platform. But what happens is it really, really hurts the user experience. Android apps, as I've said, run horribly. So it's sending a very confusing message to developers. You're basically influencing them to say, well, I know BlackBerry 10 has this great platform with multitasking and cascade effects for the apps on the home screen and all this other sort of stuff, and it can run apps a lot better than it can run Android apps. It can run BlackBerry 10 apps a lot better than Android apps, but they're coming out with an Android device, so I shouldn't even bother with making native BlackBerry 10 apps. So that's the message to developers, is that don't make any apps for BlackBerry 10, just make them all for Android, and BlackBerry 10 users will suffer, and those people who invested money in our platform, who basically bought in when nobody else was, we're forsaking them by giving them a worse user experience, and then we're moving on to Android. And even if it's just an option, it's eventually going to engulf the majority of their business. And then lastly, don't get me wrong, Android has some cool things about it. Google Now is a nice feature. It's cool how you can customize things, and that definitely is why it has an appeal, because it's so open-ended. But there are some things which Android does worse. The multitasking is done worse. Basically, there's no swipe gestures, so getting around the operating system is a bit more cumbersome. It doesn't have as good of one-handed usability. And also, the universal search is much better on BlackBerry than it is on Android. Trying to use the Google search bar to search files natively inside of Android is a very hard experience, because it doesn't search in a lot of places, so you're not really left with it being a very powerful feature. So the universal search on BlackBerry 10 is also much better. And those are basically all the reasons why I think that BlackBerry should make an Android phone, why it'd be a good option, and why I think it would be a bad option. Of course, there's a lot more reasons for the bad option, and I'd love to get your guys' input on it. But anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video, and please don't forget to tell me your thoughts in the comments down below.